demonstration cases. And now I come to the specific conservation case. We did this scoping and attempts to find requesters mainly by attempting 2 science policy conferences. One was in Hungary in June and another one in November in Poland. And we had a workshop in Hungary and I had a talk in Poland, and there was panel discussions and such things. And we got into contact with some potential requesters, mainly from DG Environment. And finally, the one who showed most interest was Marco Fritz from the biodiversity unit of DG Environment. And he is now our requester. And more or less at the same time when we started to work on our demonstration case, was launched the EU Biodiversity Strategy 2020. So there was the idea, because this is something policy relevant, to link it, and out of the 6 targets that this Biodiversity Strategy 2020 contains, with communicating with the potential requesters, we found out that probably this green infrastructure topic is one which would be most suitable for our demonstration case. So we defined the first long list of potential subtopics and questions, and we discussed this in the consortium and in the team and with colleagues and with experts and with requesters. Just a brief overview about these subtopics and potential questions. Existing networks of protected sites and to what extent they can be seen or used as green infrastructure. We had the idea to work about prioritization of restoration effects, improvement of functional flyways, improvement of the coherence of the Natura 2000, or more related to technical infrastructure and how this could meet the requirement of nature conservation would be the approach of greening grey infrastructure, which specific measures of greening would be specifically beneficially for combat fragmentation. And then the third one was, how does green infrastructure contribute to multifunctional land use and well-balanced delivery of ecosystem services? And here we had the point of adaptation to climate change and improvement of ecosystem resilience. And the last one, which is biodiversity benefits of multifunctional floodplain management. And we proposed this set of sub-questions and topics to the requesters, and this last point was finally the one that was chosen in rather heavily involving the requester into the choice of the topic. So they wanted us, let's say, to do it, and this is was our main reason. Besides that, we think it's suitable for the project and for the possibilities that we do it. So the research question that we are trying to tackle in our assessment is the impact on biodiversity of multifunctional floodplain management compared to conventional flood control measures. And the policy context is that this is related to green infrastructure, that it's therefore an issue in the EU Biodiversity Strategy 2020. There are several directives which are related to this topic. And we went on by deciding for a systematic review, and in the workshops we had about the methods this spring here in Brussels. We heard about this approach of doing systematic reviews by trying to separate it into this structure where we try to define a population in a statistical meaning. So the things that we want to investigate are floodplains in our case. Then what is the intervention? This would be this multifunctional management. A comparator, which would be a traditional conventional flood control measure, like to build some dams, or we will see then with the expert about the details of these things. And the outcome would be an increase or decrease of the level of biodiversity, or that it does not get affected. So for this to go on, we need crucially already now in the setting of the question, in the specific setting, we need some kind of information from the experts, and this is what we are looking forward to get in our workshop. One point is, for example, the definition of the intervention and the comparator. So which kinds of multifunctional floodplain management do exist, and which makes sense to include into our assessment, and should they all be pooled or analyzed separately, things like this. And the same with the conventional flood protection measures. Then with biodiversity, for this particular case, does it make sense to include all levels of biodiversity, like genetic and species level and ecosystems, or is it better to focus on something more specific? Which kind of indicators to use? For example, should we also use the abundance of target species or red list species as an indicator of overall biodiversity? Or should we use only species richness or other kind of indicators, or structural indicators like habitat heterogeneity? We are quite sure that we should, to avoid any bias from the very beginning, that we should include, of course, both positive and negative impact that will be detected. So we don't try to assess increase of biodiversity, or only increase, but also, of course, if there is a study that's with the result that there was a decline, we must use both kinds of impacts in both directions. And another very important point, where also the input from the experts on the subject are very important, is the question of the literature. Is there at all sufficient literature available to make a meaningful and viable systematic review? And in our case, it seems to be that there are quite a lot of studies, but that a rather high proportion is in grey literature. And I think that this is also a very nice challenge for the NoK to test the performance of the NoK and the meaningfulness of the NoK, because if you get a list of 50 papers, when you press the Scopus button, then you don't have to use the NoK. So I think it's a challenge, this situation, but I think it's a positive challenge for us that enables us to test the NoK nicely. So there are many projects. There's a list of some that we selected, which are rather famous, rather big projects in this topic on floodplain management. And my last slide is some first results about this issue of testing the performance of the NoK. It's something which is very recent. For example, I don't know yet if from these 14 confirmed experts really all of them will show up. But what I want to mention is that we chose a broad approach of trying to contact a broad set of hubs. So not only those ones that were very specifically dealing with floodplains, for example, but all that could somehow be related. And from 80, we got only 6 replies in the first step of contacting these hubs with this simulated call for tender. And in the second call, we included more, we sent a reminder, and we included more specific experts and contacted totally 50 specific experts in the topic. And then we got at least 30 replies. And finally, from the 50 experts, 14 confirmed more or less that they will join our workshop and our working group. So my very first conclusion from this very preliminary numbers here is that it's important to get to the root, to get really to the experts. And if the hubs, although they might be very influential in terms of knowledge flow, if you want to compile rather quickly a group of experts, and we needed maybe 1.5 months to get these 14 experts, then it's beneficial if you get very deep into these roots and hierarchy of the NoK, and not just the biggest and most important knowledge hubs, because they will not answer or will tell you that they don't know any expert, or there are so many, or whatever. Okay, then my last comment is you're all very much invited and welcome to our workshop, also if you're not experts on floodplain management, because many of you are experts, and I saw this, and all of us, we saw this in our discussions on so many different other kind of aspects which are important for the case study, but for the whole project, for the whole process of underlying process of the NoK. That if you have time tomorrow afternoon or Thursday morning, please join our workshops. They will deal with the final adjustment of the question, and we also try to get hints for further experts, hubs, and grey literature, key papers, and a discussion on the draft protocol and search strategy. And in our case, we will have also 2 additional small talks from experts in Wednesday afternoon and Thursday morning from the requester from DG Environment. That's all. Thanks a lot for your attention.